All right. Next up, we have Rosa Hernandez. Rosa Hernandez immigrated to the United States at the age of 4 from Mexico. She works with Tulsa's local undocumented community, fighting against anti-immigrant policies and empowering undocumented youth through DREAM Alliance Oklahoma. Welcome, Rosa Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for creating this space and for having such a variety of people here. It's super awesome and it's incredibly empowering. My name is Rosa Hernandez, and really, so I do kind of just want to talk a little bit about anti-immigrant policies here in Tulsa. Because they can be a little bit confusing. We have been seeing a little bit of progress, not very much, but before I go into that, I do also want to throw out, like Jessica did, a disclaimer that I am not an attorney. Though, you know, and just like Jessica, I have quite a bit of experience with the, you know, the immigration system, mainly just regarding DACA, because I am an undocumented DACA recipient as well. So there is that. And again, like Jessica, as please feel free to shout out like any questions you guys might have about anything that I'm referencing, because it can be a little bit confusing. And I'm also still learning as well. It's a never-ending process, so there are some questions that I might also not be able to answer. I'm not the best at explaining the policy aspect. A good friend of mine, Chris Schoaf, and a couple of attorneys at TU are like the most incredible people that have helped me really be able to understand these policies over the last maybe 3-4 years. But yeah, so to get started, I'm an undocumented person that lives here in Tulsa. I've been like advocating for the undocumented and with the undocumented community for a couple of years now. But I also don't have a presentation like some of our other incredibly well-prepared folks. You guys are awesome. But yeah, so there are a couple of anti-immigrant policies that we have within the county, Tulsa County. It's not the city. And that's where things do tend to get a little bit confusing. We have two. One is the IGSA, IGSA. I don't remember off the top of my head what it stands for, but that one allows us to practically warehouse undocumented deportees at our county jail at David L. Moss, to put it simply. The other contract that we have is the 287G contract, and that one pretty much it deputizes sheriffs within Tulsa County to act as ICE officials within the Tulsa County Jail, which can be incredibly problematic, especially when we have both of those. The IGSA actually supposedly it will be getting canceled. That means that we will not have beds in our county jail to be utilized for those detainees, those deportees that ICE tends to just move around a lot and, you know, put in our jail. So there's a lot that goes into that, and again, I'm not like the best at explaining it. A good friend of mine, Chris Schoaf, has been tracking like an incredible amount of data for years on these two contracts, and they're really like amazing at being able to explain the financial costs, which they both are financial costs to Tulsa taxpayers. Like myself, as an undocumented person, I do pay my taxes, even though people don't think that we undocumented people do. But so that's, you know, coming out of our pockets. That's money that we could be using for other things like our streets and, you know, repairs that we need to be seeing around, you know, Tulsa County as well. But it does come at a cost to us as taxpayers to be able to warehouse detainees in our county jail. And again, that's the IGSA, and that one supposedly it will, the county commissioners will be letting it just phase out. And again, I don't have that date right at the top of my head either. But yeah, so what those two contracts and what 287G do to our community, they allow for this fear to be created, and this tension to be created within the undocumented community and the police departments. Because even though it is a county contract, because we do utilize our county jail, TPD does utilize our county jail, that allows for folks to be able to funnel into that and to be funneled into the deportation system, you know, to be able to be deported. And I mean, so many traffic stops, routine traffic stops have led to deportation by Tulsa City, the Tulsa police officers. So it's not just sheriffs that, you know, the county sheriffs that are pulling people into that pipeline. It is, it's TPD as well. And these sort of contracts, again, like I had mentioned before, create this tension within our communities because of that fear of deportation is there. There have been instances where victims of domestic violence, survivors of domestic violence, sorry, have called TPD for help and assistance, and instead they are the ones that get put into detention for misunderstandings, you know, language barriers and whatnot. And they, you know, are the ones being deported and put into that deportation process, even though they are the survivors of domestic violence and just needed help. So there's a lot of instances where these contracts create this fear within our undocumented community, and we just do not trust the police to, you know, as much as we would like to, for that fear of deportation. And because of these two contracts, I personally have experienced a deportation, one of my family members being deported here in Tulsa, and it was, you know, due to a routine traffic stop. And if you do ask our Tulsa County Sheriff, which his name is Vic Regalado, if you ask him if routine traffic stops, you know, lead to deportation, he'll be telling you that no, that he will just make sure that, you know, that doesn't happen. But all of this stuff is completely out of his power. He has no power in, you know, picking and choosing who gets to go into that deportation pipeline. You know, the Vic Regalado will, you know, we have heard him over and over and over again spread misinformation as to who is being deported. He has repeatedly told us that it's only, you know, super violent criminals, people who, you know, are doing all of these terrible things, but day to day, you know, we see it all the time that people, again, who have been stopped in routine traffic stops are the ones being pulled into that and being deported because of 287G. Again, we see it all the time. When we ask for Vic Regalado to explain that, he will go on and tell us lie to our faces after we have had people doing that research and looking into that all the time. But yeah, sorry, I completely lost my train of thought here. But yeah, so that's kind of the gist of those, both of those contracts that we have here locally. One of them is going to be phased out. He is, yeah, our Tulsa County Sheriff is elected. Sorry, we got a question from Erica, and Erica mentioned, is Regalado elected? Regalado is our Sheriff, Vic Regalado, and he is elected. He is up for election this year, and he is running unopposed. This is one of the issues with county politics, is that no one pays attention to county politics. They tend to be a little bit dull and boring, and no one really wants to get involved with that. How do we get someone else to run? Whoopsie, sorry. So another question from Erica is, how do we get someone else to run? That is not something that I would be able to explain to you, and maybe Jessica Vasquez could give me a hand on that. But yeah, if Jessica, if you want to chime in at any time, please do. But
I think she had to hop off
okay, cool.
for another Zoom.
Oh, awesome. And then we got another question. How long did the deportation take for my family member who was deported? They were deported within 3 days of being in the county jail. And it was a very intense experience for them. I have siblings who, my family is a mixed status family. Some of my siblings are citizens, and just the way that happened and the impact that it had on us as children, me as a teenager, but some of my siblings as, 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, was very traumatic. It was, yeah, it was a very traumatic experience coming home from school and expecting our, that person to be home, and they never came home. And later that evening, my mother got a phone call from David Almas from the county jail. It was really sad. It was heartbreaking, and it's definitely not something that I wish on absolutely anybody, to go through something like that at all. And that's also why, I advocate incredibly heavily, because the trauma that it creates in our children and in our families is disgusting. It's awful. And we tend to preach against family separation, and we tend to preach that, yeah, we want to take care of our children, but we're not keeping them from being exposed to this sort of trauma. And that is, I mean, if you are taking care of the children, you are keeping them from being exposed to crappy situations that will traumatize them, but yeah, it was an awful experience. It sucked. And again, I don't wish it on anybody. It's, people will always argue, well, if, people need to serve the consequences of their actions through, and if deportation is that consequence, then they should serve it. But deportation is not accountability. And I advocate, I'm a prison abolitionist. I also don't believe in the police department, that we need a police department either. People can always, if we give communities the resources and the things that they need, they will thrive, and that will keep people from committing these crimes that are being committed. But deportation is not accountability. It's not holding anybody accountable to their actions. People are deported, and they can keep doing the things that they are doing wherever they are deported to. And again, that's not accountability. That's just shrugging them off. But yeah, sorry, that I just went on a little rant. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, yeah, 3 days was pretty fast. At our county jail, they will ask you if you want to sign a voluntary deportation. And that's what he did. He voluntarily deported, this person was voluntary. He signed a voluntary deportation after a couple of days, because the conditions at the jail were just so crappy, that they just did not want to be there. And they will make those situations incredibly miserable for people, to be, to force them to sign these voluntary deportations. Yeah.
Okay, Janine asked if there is any research done before deciding a person should be deported.
No, the only really real research that's done is their name goes through the system, and if their name is, flagged as this person doesn't have documentation, that is pretty much the only research that they need, and the only fact that they need to be able to say, yeah, you're going to be deported. There is, almost zero like what was done for that person to end up in that situation isn't accounted for at all. Again, like some of our survivors of domestic violence have been deported, because that is really the only thing that needs to be done. As soon as they get into our county jail, their names will go through that system, and they'll be flagged, and ICE will issue a hold on them.
Erica asked, do you believe that all ICE jails are terrible conditions for that reason?
I do believe so. Yeah, I do believe that a lot of the conditions in ICE facilities are for that reason. There's also a huge lack of Spanish speaking, people who are able to interpret those things, and resources for people as well. And I do believe that it's, that might be a reason for sure.
Who are the politicians that are supportive of immigrants and against federal immigration policies?
So right now, so Karen Keith at the county has voted no on the 287G renewals a couple of times already. She is in support of getting rid of that contract. The other two county commissioners, Stan Salee and Ron Peters, both have voted yes to renew those contracts, even though we have given them all of the information, how costly it is to taxpayers, and how it is not just targeting these supposed criminals that our sheriff keeps telling them that it's targeting. They have voted for it, to be renewed before as well. But on a city level, Greg Robinson is a phenomenal advocate for undocumented people. He has expressed and been very, very vocal about, against 287G. He has stood with us undocumented immigrants, next to me in this struggle for fighting for our, rights here locally. we have had conversations. I have had conversations with GT Bynum before, and he has told us, me, and other advocates, that he can't come out publicly in support of us because of, all of this, politics stuff, whatever. Yeah, I'm not going to apologize, but he is a coward. We do not need career politicians in these elected positions. We need people who legitimately care about their people, like Greg Robinson, and other folks who have expressed their that discomfort with 287G and these things, these kinds of contracts on the county level. And again, if we could elect people into the county commission, it's a board of 3 county commissioners here in Tulsa County. And if we could just elect someone else that is against 287G, we could get rid of it as well. But that's the difficult part, because that position is just, no one wants to do that work. And yeah, it's hard work.
Are there any grounds that undocumented individuals who are stopped for traffic checks can employ to delay their deportation?
Yeah, so one thing that you can definitely do is, seek out an attorney. The other thing is, absolutely do not sign a voluntary deportation. Absolutely do not. Refuse to sign it. They will try to convince you that that is the only thing that you can do to get out of that situation, but just absolutely do not sign it. Even, though you may be, there are grounds, supposedly there are grounds to deport you because you're undocumented and ICE has issued that hold. Do not sign a voluntary deportation. Do not seek out a legal attorney. There's pro bono attorneys. I know the TU Law Clinic has, been in our county jail. They've been super incredible about, helping our immigrant community here locally, but definitely look for an attorney. There are incredible attorneys here locally. But it can be expensive if if it's not a pro bono attorney. And that's where that can get really hard, because if you are in a crappy situation and do need an attorney that's, going to be, that's just going to focus on you and your case for as long as you need, it can be expensive. And a lot of our immigrant community and undocumented community can't afford that. We are working class people. A lot of us are working class people, and we can't afford legal representation, which is why this system is made the way that it is. And it's created that way to be able to, oppress and constantly dehumanize brown and Black people and immigrants. This system is created to disenfranchise us, and yeah, it's hard, and it's very difficult.
Okay, Rosa, there's a question in the comments, but for time's sake, we still have 3 more speakers. Is it okay if you answer that question in the comment block for Erica, for all of us?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and being with us this Saturday. So there's a couple of questions. So if you don't mind answering those in the group chat. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.